Okay, hello and welcome to the second part of the source questions inquiry. I'm going to go through some feedback first of all on the source questions that you submitted from last lesson. Okay, so last lesson you were given a question which asked you how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the problems faced by medical staff treating battle wounds on the Western Front. And to answer this question, you needed to use CAP. Okay, the acronym that we use to answer this question is CAP. This stands for content, author, and purpose. Okay, so how do I actually answer this question? Okay, the first thing you needed to do was to look at the content of the source. Okay, and I've got an example to the left. Okay, so source B, for example, if you have a look at source B in that picture, the picture itself, the photograph itself, is the content of the source, okay, and there are 3 steps that you needed to do to be able to answer this question using the content. Okay, the first step is that you needed to give an inference from the source. Okay, so you needed to say source B is useful for an inquiry into the problems faced by medical staff, as I can infer that. Okay, so give an inference meaning what can you learn from the source about the problems that were faced. The second step you needed to do to look at the content of the source was to reference the source. And if you have a written source, then you would quote that source. But if you have a photograph or a picture or a cartoon, for example, you would have to describe what you can see in the source to support your inference. Okay, so you needed a sentence saying, in the source it shows, or in the source I can see, ... The third step to answer the content of the source successfully was to support the source with your own knowledge, and that is what you know about what's going on in the source that isn't actually in the source, but it's things that you have learnt from the World War I topic to support what the source is saying. Okay. And we had a look at this source, okay, and I'm going to show you a model answer for the content of the source, and you may check your answer alongside this to see how well you've done. Okay, so first of all, in green on the screen, you can see I have looked at the I have understood how to answer the inference section of the content. Okay, and I've said source B is useful for an inquiry into the problems faced by medical staff in treating battle injuries, as I can infer that nurses and other medical staff treated soldiers for a range of head injuries at casualty clearing stations. Okay, so I gave an inference. I can infer that there were nurses and other medical staff that treated soldiers for head injuries. Then I've gone into reference the source, and it's a photograph. So what I've done is, obviously I cannot quote the source. So what I've done is I've described what I can see in the source that supports my inference. I've then said that in the blue. In the source, it shows a group of wounded soldiers lined up with injuries, which are being bandaged by 2 nurses and another medic. Okay, brilliant. Now the third stage again was that I needed to support the source with my own knowledge. Okay, so in purple I've said this connects to my own knowledge, as I know that head injuries were common because the shrapnel of shells could penetrate deep into the body when the shells exploded. Therefore, this could lead to fatal blood loss or infections from bacteria if they were not treated soon enough. Casualty clearing stations were located about 12 miles from the front line to treat some minor injuries, with some more technical operations such as extracting shrapnel from the body taking place inside tents. Okay, so I've supported it with plenty of own knowledge, okay, to show the examiner that I know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm looking at this source, about the problems that were faced. Okay, the next stage is that you needed to look at the author and the purpose of the source. Okay, the author is who created the source. Okay, so the author is who created the source. And when you look at the author, you need to think about how much you can trust their account to tell you about what the question is asking you. And the purpose is simply, well, why did this person create the source at this time? Okay, what reasons do they have for creating this source at this time? And when you look at that, you need to again start to think about whether this makes the source more or less useful. And we've got a model answer here. So in pink, I've said that the author, well, actually, this source is a bit bizarre. It doesn't tell us who created it. So I've just stated that. Source B was created by an unknown photographer. I don't know who who took this photograph. It doesn't tell us. But then I've gone to say, actually, it could be that the photographer was a journalist, maybe, or a war photographer. Okay, because I've then gone to kind of guess who they might be, and why they might be there at that time. The purpose of the source. Okay, I've then started to say, well, the photograph shows a casualty clearing station, and it's possible that it was taken to reassure people at home that wounded soldiers were cared for, or to demonstrate the work that was done by nurses. So possibly just to show nurses in a very positive way, and the work that they were doing was heroic. It was brilliant. Therefore, however, we cannot fully trust the source, as it could be a form of propaganda. Okay, so it might be that it's actually persuading the people back home of how in control the nurses are and what a brilliant job they were doing, and it doesn't tell us, therefore, a few things that we want to know about the problems. I've then gone on to explain that. It could be a form of propaganda which shows only one group of people being treated for head injuries. The source does not tell us about the more problematic injuries, okay, more difficult injuries, such as with more serious wounds, who may have needed deeper surgery. Okay, we can't see what's going on in that tent in the background. There might be soldiers in that tent who are really suffering, who are dying, who are really struggling to survive, and there might be nurses and medics, doctors in the tent behind who are really finding it very difficult to cope with what's going on in there. Okay. Can you now answer the questions related to what we've just talked about?